Yeah, so my name is Frank Madden. I joined the program after I think 32 years away from formal education. So it was I really felt like a novice on the first day. I struggled actually that everybody was able to talk and also write in the chat room at the same time. But by the end of the year, I was actually able to do it. So I'm an entrepreneur, really. I have about 8 different businesses that are all very much involved in technology, new technology. So I have businesses from engineering services businesses to training businesses to solar battery businesses to offsite manufacturing businesses. So I'm very much involved in innovation through my career and through entrepreneurship and setting up businesses. But I had no formal education in it. Also, COVID gave me an unbelievable opportunity to do what I always wanted to do, was to get a postgraduate because I didn't have a degree or postgraduate, but I had certainly from a life experience. I had, the old diploma, and I really wanted to further my education and get back into formal education. I couldn't have done it without COVID, and I got the opportunity to take on design and innovation. So for me, it was the perfect course because it would sort of say, well, I've been doing this all my life. I wonder how far away from the established theory is what I've done, and that was the main reason that I did it, Claudia. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it's very good, and also it's to recognise, Frank, and I can see what you're wearing there, the Crest Solutions badge, and I know Crest Solutions is a company based here in Cork that we're all very, very proud of. It's been an incredible success story, and I know, Frank, you were a co-founder of that company, so I think it's just to recognise that as well. 32 years, Frank, outside of education. What did it feel like trying to come back into the circle?
Yeah, so to be honest, I really did honestly feel like a fresher. I really it sort of intimidated me, but very, very quickly it sort of you sort of understand that it's like everything behind the facade is people, and the people are all have stories and all have struggles and all have are at different stages, and then it becomes really about the people. And I think even before we were talking really about the whole experience and the people. It was incredible how much of a team experience it became, and like 32 years ago, I still hang around with the people I went to college with in Sligo. And when I came to Cork, I still hang around with the people I went to college in Cork. And there's something about when you start an educational experience, it really puts people together with very long-term friendships. And that's going to happen, even though, believe it or not, we were never in the college for the full year because of COVID. But we still very much feel proud to be UCC alumni and that we were on the same ship together for the year. It's strange, but the digital experience worked, I would say, equally as well as the physical experience.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I've heard your classmates also say the same, Frank, which is, I think, also a great endorsement for how the people within the class worked with one another, supporting one another, and there's definitely friendships for life are coming out of that, Frank. Really well made point. Frank, I'm really inspired by the project that you undertook starting semester 2. So after Christmas, can you tell us a bit about what that project is about?
Yeah, so the project is called Tech to Schools, and what we do is we basically take surplus laptops from businesses and recycle them in a way that business is happy to give the laptops, and then we give them to disadvantaged schools. And we've been incredibly successful with it, and I'm really proud to be part of it. It's become into a bit of a team in its own right, but we've been very successful now, and we've got donations, over 1,200 donations since we started, and we haven't really started. So the innovation through design thinking goes through a very structured way of doing a difficult, or what we know as a wicked problem. So we're actually in the sort of last phase of that, the design and test. So Really, it's not for the next few years that we're going to have the full impact, but we see that we've set a target for 5,000 laptops to be donated to disadvantaged students, and there's a huge need out there, and it's fairly incredible. But that was born completely out of the innovation for design thinking, and what I really loved about it is that the course sort of challenged you to do something that you sort of have deep down you really want to do, but you're nearly afraid to say it, and you don't have an opportunity, or you don't have a way of growing it. So it's almost like a seed that's buried so deep. It was the only way that it was going to get the bit of light and food to blossom. So I always wanted to do, when you're very established in business and you can give back to society, the easy thing to do is write a check, but I sort of wanted to, I sort of wanted to do something where I could actually use my network and maybe some of the talents that I've learned over the years, so that I'd have a bigger impact than just writing a check. But I'd never have been able to let that little seed see the light until we were challenged by the course to come up with something. And it wasn't only me, there was another 40 or 50 people on the course, and you could see at the beginning when we were to come up with ideas, they'd come up with ideas that you knew they weren't happy with, but eventually everybody found that little thing to say, I really want to do this, and you expose that in front of people, and everybody was so supportive. So that's how Tech to Schools came about. I even though I've been 32 years since I was in education, I absolutely believe that the difference in entrepreneurship and success in the area that I've been has always been continual strive to know and to learn more. I just did it through audiobooks rather than formal education up to this year. And I sort of think that anybody that is disadvantaged in Ireland, and the reason that we've come from essentially a third world country when I was growing up in the 80s to one of the leading countries now, it's absolutely because of our education system. You can get out of disadvantage with education, and now there's a new disadvantage coming up that if you can't afford a laptop, you just for the sake of 300 euros that you might be disadvantaged. So I think we can contribute in a big way for people just by giving them the tools. We're not forcing them to learn. We're not forcing them to use the laptops. We're just giving them the tools so the schools can work with them to make sure that they can go on to third level and they can have normal lives. And if they're get themselves out of whatever their disadvantage is.
Yeah, I think that's inspiring, Frank. And we know even we're both in Cork City here, I think, Frank, or Cork County at least, and even during COVID here, we're probably aware of homes, the silent disadvantage where maybe there's kids haven't been able to partake fully in education because they just didn't have the hardware, and I think that's something you're really passionate about, Frank. Where does that passion come from, Frank? I know I've heard you talk about education in your own life previously. Does it come from something in your own background?
Yes, and I came from a family that was very much focused on the importance of taking responsibility and the importance of hard work. And education was not important, in my family. It was more important to be able to get up early in the morning and do a hard day's work. But as you go through life, you see that, and that's a fantastic asset to have. But if you can have both assets, if you can have education and be able to look around and see best practices in the world along with hard work, you pretty much become unstoppable. So that's, I think, as I grew older, I saw more the importance of education to form that absolute drive and hard work. Deliverable for me in the long term is absolutely to deliver, to make the impact. The deliverable of the course, of course, was, we had to build an artifact, which was a very interesting process where you have to sort of think about how can I make something here to show as I build how I am building, rather than just sort of say. So what my artifact was I built almost like a process for building a project like this, so that it's almost like what the architect does. Normally the entrepreneur only thinks about the built house and how that's going to be used, But the artifact is really the instruction manuals of how we built that. So that was probably, in terms of time, there was huge body of time put into that. But the interesting about that process is that informs the house all the way along, because you're thinking about, well, how do I explain this to others? Which means that, well, maybe I haven't explained it that well to myself. So it actually is a very good process, because it forces you to think about the end game all along and tweak it and so on. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, you're spot on, and I think I think you're right, Frank. You essentially, for me now, have a roadmap how others could create these social changes. And I know you also spoke to Iseult Ward. I don't know if you want to say a few words about Iseult's contribution to your thinking.
Yeah, so yeah, I spoke to a number of different people that have done something similar before. Iseult Ward is Food Cloud, and she's inspirational in so many ways. But she basically, it's almost like she slapped me around the face and says, because my idea, Paddy, was that I was going to set up this process, and then I was going to walk away, and this process was going to just run, because I had set it up, for basically it was almost like a matching agency that I was going to get the schools and the businesses to talk to each other. And she just said, you need to be real here. You have to be the driver behind this. And there has to be a driver behind it, because these things don't just happen. And Food Cloud didn't happen. And but she said, you need to think about it, commit to it, and then if you commit to it, to do it. And she says, you got to put 3 years into it, which I'm prepared to do, and then you got to drive it. So that was huge for me, because it meant that it meant that I had to personally commit to it, but I didn't realize that I was going to have to. And she's just inspirational, and I just thought that Food Cloud, which is an inspirational charity, came out of a project very similar out of university as well. It was a university project that they felt passionate about. So it just goes to show you, just that releasing, or that finding the seed inside of somebody. I'm just repeating basically what happened to her. Yeah. Now, I'm in a much better position, I'm obviously 30, 40 years older than Iseult, and with lots of contacts. So I would expect that it's going to be easier for me. But still, the same lessons were learned from Iseult.
Yeah, and I think that's well recognised, and I know you've given Iseult a lot of credit for maybe the way you're thinking as well. But I'd also like to probably suggest, Frank, that Tech to Schools is well on its way to creating a fairly sizable impact on its own as well. For you, we spoke about the 5,000 piece of equipment into homes. What does success look like in the future, Frank, for this as an initiative? Where is it going to live? Who's going to be looking after it? Is it going to serve a purpose for a period of time, and it'll then, I suppose, slip into the background, or is there a longer term vision here for it?
So that's a great question, Paddy. And I know, having set up lots of businesses, where you think they're going to go is never where they go. They go where they almost take on their own life. But you have to have a goal, and you have to have, and I often I'm invited to speak to entrepreneurs, and I always say, like, don't do a business plan in the first year, because it's just a waste of paper. You just got to commit yourself, have an idea what you want to do. You need business plans when you have something to plan, but in the very beginning, you just need to think about, how do I stay between the ditches long enough to get a bit of cash and so on. This is a little bit like that. We have set our mind on 5,000 digital devices over a 3-year period. We're a third of the way there already. So I think we're going to beat that. But I think it's going to find its own path, and I'm going to stick with it until it's very, very well established, and then we'll see where it goes. Things will change for me as well along that. My only it's just the amount of time that I can give it at the moment is only about 20% of my time.
Also referred just there, and I want you maybe to, it's a difficult question, but I'm still going to ask you to know that you've changed, and you've been changing, and you'll continue changing. Can you give us maybe some indication of how you feel you've changed in the year or so, Frank?
So, Paddy, if somebody goes on something like a course like this, that is so far away from what they normally do, and they manage to go through the full course, it's absolutely going to change them, whether they like it or not. You know, if I did something that was maybe just one step away from what I normally do, I don't think it would change me. But this was so far away from what I normally do. I was in the same room with people that are half my age. There was people in the class that weren't born when I set up Crest Solutions, you know. So you couldn't go into a process like that. And the whole idea, I think, was because of COVID, to really expose myself to something new. So how did I change? I think I found something that I want to do within myself that isn't business related, and that I get a great amount of personal satisfaction out of being able to do some good for other people. I think I really got inspired by education, formal education, and the good that it does, because this particular course went into people and went down very, very deep and found that seed and exposed it, allowed those people to expose it for themselves. And I thought that was inspirational. And I said it on I think on the last day as well, is that some of the people that are half my age with no real network set up, you know, and no real experience, are doing things that are fundamentally they believe in. And that was inspirational. At a very, very young age, to have found various projects. And a lot of them actually, Paddy, were very much to do with the environment and very much to do with sustainability of humans on the planet. Very, very big, ambitious things, you know, that people that thought that in a small part of Ireland you could make an impact on a global stage, which was inspirational. And just I learned so much about the education system. I understand now why you know, how it works in terms of being able to read papers, being able to build an argument on other people's work, and so on. So much stuff I would never have seen before. I could talk for an hour on that, Paddy, to be honest.
You are an inspiration, I think, to know, and hopefully there's people listening to this that are really maybe feel they're an imposter. They don't have what it takes to go back into a program like this, having been out of education, or maybe not received, you know, some of that formal education others have. Could you say a few words to those, you know, from your own experience?
Yeah, so look, everybody feels an imposter. Everybody at some time feels an imposter. I'm sure, right, you know, but I mean, you just take that thought and say, okay, am I going to let that control me, or am I not, you know? Like everybody, you know, always has thoughts that puts them down. You sort of have to sort of say, okay, thanks for that. You're trying to keep me between the ditches, but I also need to move forward as well as stay between the ditches. So I just think I'm sure you had the same experience with me, Paddy. You have to be inspired by the showcase event, about how so many people, there was no imposters on the last day, because they found what they wanted to do and they were very committed to all their projects. So I think it gave a very safe process really for that, and a very, you know, it wasn't easy. I think everybody felt very, very uncomfortable about trying to find a project that you could do that was meaningful. And you know, everybody was exposed. It was a difficult process for us, not because the school or the college imposed a difficult process on us. It's because we were forced to impose that difficult process on ourselves and ask, well, what am I doing? What can I do? How can I use what I've learned to have some sort of impact? So it's more that an internal conflict that was set up for us, rather than, you know, that this was an extremely hard course that we had to do. You know, it wasn't like that. It was more about, you know, got us to ask ourselves very hard questions, you know, and that's of course going to be different for everybody. But I found it difficult, personally found it difficult to figure out, could I commit to it? It wasn't hard for me to come up with an idea. It wasn't hard for me to make something happen in the idea. The hard thing for me was, am I prepared to commit long term to this? You know, that has no financial gain to me whatsoever, but has a huge gain to other people. And am I going to stick with it? Because what it means, Paddy, is not so much the time, but you're making commitments to other people. You're bringing other people along on your journey, and they're really going to do things with these laptops and like the schools. So that was difficult for me. And Isolde Wald, we talked about earlier, was the key that said, okay, that was the point that I said, okay, I'm going to commit to this.
Yeah, and Frank, I have to recognise as well, you were one of the award winners from this programme, and specifically on the area of tackling global challenges, through maybe local initiatives initially. So I think that's really important, that we're not afraid of going big, and taking on some of these global challenges. So I think it's just we need to recognise as well, despite maybe whether you had that imposter syndrome or not coming in, it's just where you got to by the end of it, and that you'd be recognised for that contribution. Frank, I'm very conscious I've taken a lot of your time here. Is there any last points you want to make before we finish up?
Well, I made a point on the last day, Paddy, that if this program was called an entrepreneurial program, it would have been as equally it would have been justified, because I'm sure that there is probably minimum 5 or 6 businesses that are going to come out of this course, and the course sort of give, it wasn't designed to be, I'm sure, to set up businesses, but what it did was it got people to ask very fundamental questions about what they're doing. And there was a lot of people on the course. Like I remember the first day, people, when they were talking about why were they on the course, they were saying that they were on almost like a V in the road of their careers, and they just feel that they needed to take time just to think about where they're doing and where they're going. And I was sort of thinking, I need time to cover the potholes in my career. Like this course wasn't going to make any difference to my career. But for most people, they were making very significant decisions, life decisions. And I think that was definitely achieved, that people made seriously life decisions that, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. And it may have been because of COVID was going on as well, that a lot of people are being very introspective about where they're going and what is it all about, and do they really want to go back to the office, be stuck in traffic, do what? Because there was a lot of people, and it wasn't just a Cork thing. I mean, this course could have been, you could have sat this course on any part of the planet as long as you had a good quality broadband and laptop. It wasn't an Irish thing. It was so there was a lot of people that were sort of caught in the trap of high rents and all that type of stuff. So I think just back to the original point, the entrepreneurial side, I think, was very, very successful, whether it was meant to be or not, on the course. If anybody was sort of thinking, maybe I need to rethink about where I'm doing, what I'm going and where do I want to be long term, it's sort of an extremely good course for that, if you embrace it. So.
Frank, yeah, very, very good, and a point well made. And you're right, I suppose we use design thinking, action design research for different types of outcomes, and the entrepreneurial outcome is definitely part of it. And it was fantastic seeing people within the cohort coming out with those business ideas at the end. And I know also, Frank, just to recognise that you were also of great assistance to some of those, and inspiring them. So Frank, I'd like to wish you all the best. I know we're going to really try by tooth or nail to have you back, contributing to the programme for the incoming cohort. I'd also like to wish you the best in Crest Solutions and those other initiatives, and for flying the Cork flag with a lot of those initiatives as well. Frank, Gormil Mahgood, August Tokabogé.
No, Bob. Cheers. Bye bye.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks.